I've made a living in very dangerous.
An integrated home with all sides.
Dianne Andrews in black and white. Welcome to Dianne Andrews in black and white. I appreciate you joining us for the last 9 years. And if you just started last week, we still appreciate your viewership. We're on the CW at 3 o'clock on Sundays in 50 parishes and in 4 counties over in Mississippi. Then we're on Pelican Broadcasting that comes on in New Orleans, Lafayette, and Baton Rouge. So we're on in 3 million homes in the state of Louisiana and the great state of Mississippi also. We're also on all the usual suspects. We're on all social medias, from Truth to Facebook to LinkedIn, all of them. We're on YouTube. We can't put all our shows on YouTube. During 2020 and 2021, a lot of my COVID shows, they pulled down. I had Dr. Peter McCullough come in to studio. I've written a book on COVID, and they pulled down a lot of the facts we had then that they're debating now in 2023. I called it the Wuhan lab virus back in 2020. I did 20 shows, and I never stopped doing shows in this studio. And my camera guy then, he wouldn't even wear a mask. You know, everybody was scared to death. He knew all the time this wasn't what they were saying it was. But anyway, thank you again for the viewership. We try to bring you issues that sometimes you don't want to hear, but they're items and issues too that you need to know. I get stopped all the time. I had lost 5 friends I've been a Democrat, I've been an independent, I've been a Republican, and I just call myself now a conservative. I don't believe in infanticide. I don't believe in killing babies. I don't believe in illegal immigrants coming across the border. Just a lot of issues. But today we're going to talk about an issue that everybody wants to talk about. We're talking about electronic vehicles. The president has given an ultimatum, I think, by 2030 we'll have 50% of all our cars, automobiles in this country as EVs, if our electrical grid is not already in trouble. Plus right now we only have 6% of our cars, the 14 million are sold a year, that are EVs. And in 2021 it was only 3%. So I've got 2 experts to talk to us about this today. The president of Gerry Lane Enterprises, Eric Lane, and also a 4th generation oil field worker, Matt Coday. His father, I just asked him, was he retired? He said his father is still working in the oil industry. He's the founder and president of Oil and Gas Workers Alliance, trying to get more jobs for American workers, and let's try to open up more of our lands, which 13 million last week, our president flew to Alaska and closed 13 millions in AMWA of our land, our oil drilling land. So we're going to talk about some of these issues and see where the future is going with these 2 experts. Come on back to Dianne Andrews in black and white. You might find out if your gas is going to go up or down and know how much you'll be paying at the tank next month. Come on back to Dianne Andrews in black and white. Thank you for coming back. To my further left, I have Mr. Eric Lane. He is the president of Gerry Lane Enterprises, car dealerships, and maybe more. He'll tell us about that later. But he's going to be talking to us about the EVs. He is a former minor league AAA baseball player with the San Francisco Giants and the Cleveland Indians. I told him when I was with IBM in New York, Ricky Henderson lived in my building, so I knew a lot of the Yankees, which was really fun. And I used to go to some of the Yankees games. And I looked at his resume, and I can tell when I talked to him, baseball is still his passion and the thing he loved the most, right? Yes. You got hurt, right, Eric?
Yeah, I did.
Is what happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you made it all the way to the minors.
I was close.
What do you call that? The big show, right?
I was right below the show.
Right below the big show.
Didn't quite get there.
Yeah, almost made it. But you've done quite a lot. I look at his resume. I mean, he's on so many boards. He was on Baton Rouge Community College. He's on Angola Rodeo. He's on a board with Dr. Strand, who we did a show with last week. He's on, and that's the dairy board, I think. Mm-hmm. And out of all the boards, some of you retired from, like BRCC and some others, but how do you split your time? Because you're an active president of Gerry Lane Enterprises.
Well, I start early. I get to work at 6:30 in the morning. And so I try to fit in my boards throughout the month. I just make time. Fortunately, I have my son, third generation, is running the company with me. Cedric Patton, my partner of close to 40 years, is helping run the company, and then Josh Teakle. So I've got 3 partners that help me where I can go out in the community and try to help.
Tell Cedric I say hello. I told you he gave me some money on a charity for the Baton Rouge Community College. I was doing a seminar for the free to the college kids, and I was raising money for sponsorship, and he gave me, and that was the first time I'd met him, but we knew some people in common. And I have to repeat this story he told me. Your father and him, y'all are from Mississippi. I remember he told me that, right?
Well, we were from Baton Rouge, but we moved to Mississippi because Dad couldn't get ownership in a dealership here.
Oh, okay.
So when I was 5 years old, we left Baton Rouge to Mississippi to buy into a small dealership.
And that's where they met, in Mississippi.
That's
I got
right,
the idea.
Cedric came to work for my dad right out of Southeastern,
where
he played football.
Oh, did he play football?
He played football at Southeastern, defensive back, and he ended up starting as a salesman with my father in 1983.
He's been with you a long time, but this was the story he told me. I think one of the dealerships he may have had some interest in or something, but I think he said your father wanted to say something about him, maybe getting part ownership or something. He said, no, don't say that. And your father said, why? Because white people won't come into the shop? And he said, no, black people won't come into the shop. If I know a black guy owns it back then. That's a real discouraging, but we as black people know about.
Well, Cedric is the only, he owns 15% of 2 of my dealerships, and he's the only black in Baton Rouge to have ownership in a dealership.
That's a wonderful thing. And he didn't have to go through the dealer program because he came up through your ranks.
He came up straight with us, and he's been an incredible partner for me. Cedric is a doer. He gets the job done.
Well, it works right there with the Gerry Lane philosophy, so he's right there. In fact, when I walked in, one guy who knew me, this was 19, and back in 19, he said, you do a TV show here, huh? So I've got some fans over there at Gerry Lane back in 19 even. I've been doing this about going on 9 years now, trying to tell truth. And hopefully we do. I had 5 friends, I told this story on another show, that didn't talk to me anymore, black women especially. Only 5% of black women are conservative. 35 to 40% of black men now, especially after Biden made the comment during the race, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And but one girlfriend called me, she said, Dianne, you were right. Everything you were saying, she took me to lunch. So I've had 5 people do that to me in the last 3-4 months, because I know you've heard of Candace Owens. You do get a lot of alienation from within black people who don't understand conservatism. Although Republican Party has a lot of problems. I just did a show on the rhinos in the Republican Party, so we know about those kinds of issues. But we're here to talk to you. You're an expert, more than anybody else I know, on electronic vehicles. And I talked a little about, we're at 6% now. They're trying to get us to go to 2030 to 50%. I'm going to introduce Matt, and then I'm going to come back to you. Matt, I met about, 2 weeks ago now, Matt? We met in Lafayette at the convention, the GOP convention.
Was it just 2 weeks ago?
Seems like 2 years, doesn't it?
Doesn't it?
Yeah. But Matt is an interesting man. He has an AD in science. He's the 4th generation oil field worker in his family. I just asked him, did his father still work there? He said, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's your organization, Oil and Gas Workers Alliance. It's really about the workers. From 2015, you've gone from 0 or 1U to 47,000 members. That's a lot of people.
It is. We're very blessed. When I founded Oil and Gas Workers Association in 2015, it was just in response to the Obama-Biden era weaponization of the EPA that really hurt U.S. producers, service companies, business owners, and cost a lot of Americans our jobs. We're seeing that.
Tell me exactly what that did. What did the EPA ruling do? What did it hurt with oil?
You know, what we're seeing today, where the EPA has been weaponized against American workers and families, like so many federal agencies.
Too many regulations.
That's exactly it. And whenever you look at the so-called environmental regulations that this Biden administration is proposing and implementing, all it does is give our jobs and America's global market share to foreign countries with far less environmentally conscious standards.
Under Trump or whoever, the last administrator, Our emissions were the lowest they had been in 50 years because we used what? Our oil, which is the cleanest in the world, and that's what people need to understand. We have more oil under our grounds here than any, including Saudi Arabia, any place in the world. We buy Russian, Venezuelan oil. How can we fight somebody we're giving millions of dollars to? That something's wrong with this war in Ukraine. Under Donald Trump, they didn't step their foot over that Ukraine border. Under Obama, they took Crimea. I did a show about 4 months ago with a guy who escaped, 82 years old, escaped from Ukraine, going down through Georgia, 728 miles. But we had no wars. ISIS was gone. Now we're back in war. ISIS back. We closed down our oil fields, 13 million acres last week in Amwa he closed. He also closed Arizona, the uranium. Russia has the #1 uranium nuclear heads in the world. And also over in Alaska, China and Russia drilling off the coast, and we do nothing, and they just built a plant, not a plant, I call it an encampment over in China and in Cuba. I did a show with a Cuban, I brought him in here, he couldn't even speak English. He was in the Remain in Mexico program that Donald Trump had. He said he was there for 2 years because we really checked out the asylum in the Remain in Mexico program. Trump went to Obrador, the president at that time of Mexico, and told him, I want you to put troops on our border on your side. He said, are you crazy? And so Trump said, okay, I'm going to put 100% tariffs on every one of your products that come into this country. He said, how soon do you want me to have them there? We had the lowest immigration in 50 years under the last administration. And 28,000 troops, again, were put on that border. That's why they couldn't get through. And now, how do you check asylum on people that are here for a split second, and all our border agents, I've done shows with border agents before, all they've become is caretakers. And how many women are getting raped and sex trafficked? And little boys are getting sex trafficked. 7.5 million people in the last 2.5 years have come through our borders. Nobody can live in a country with no borders. It's like opening the doors to your house and say, come on in, take what you want.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point of this Biden administration and all of their policies. You know, Joe Biden said on the campaign trail that he was going to transition away from our oil and gas jobs.
Well, he told people, didn't he?
That's true. It's certainly one campaign
Obama
promise.
also said, I'm going to fundamentally transform this country down and rebuild it back up. Don't think he's not working on us still.
I couldn't agree with you more. And you know, the legacy media has tried to divide our country by race. And I believe it was President John F. Kennedy who famously said, let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer,
Right.
but the right answer. And the right answer for every single American is for us to increase USA oil and gas production, to bring back a roaring economy, to secure the border, to bring gas prices and grocery prices and home cooling costs down for every single American, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's policies are hurting every single American.
I don't think Kamala has a policy. But she tags along with Joe, right, sometimes. And but you're right. We're being hurt drastically by what's going on in this country. Inflation, when Donald Trump left, was 1.8%. Gas was $1.85. And today, inflation shot up to 12%, so now they can say, oh, okay, inflation's down. But I was just talking to Dr. Strand, our Commissioner of Agriculture and Forestry. When you just look at the foods we eat, the eggs, the meats and everything, inflation on those items that we eat, that people need for subsistence, is 17%, 15 to 17%. We're talking about, you know, people like us, we're good as far as, you know, being able to buy food, right, for right now. But people who are in the lower income, they can't afford to feed their children. I did a show on starvation. 25% of kids go to bed hungry in this country. That makes no sense. No. Still today they do, even before this administration. Now, right now, us people, we have lost $5,000 in 2.5 years on spending power under this administration, because the inflation, even if you got a raise, it's not keeping up with the inflation cost, so you're losing money. Under Donald Trump, we made $8,000 more of spending power because we used our products. Who has, let's say you got flour, but you go to this, you create flour some kind of way, you have flour enough to last you several years, and why do you go and buy flour from your neighbor who's selling flour, or whatever it is? Who does that? No rational human being buys something that they have. and has the best. We have the cleanest oil in the world, right? Our emissions are the lowest in the world. Our CO2 under Donald Trump was the lowest in 50 years because we used our oil. Our oil is not heavy. And do you really think Russia and Venezuela care, communist countries, on how they process their oil? Tell me how they do it, Matt.
They don't. And in fact, one of the big facts that a lot of people forget is that from 2005 to 2019, America's oil and gas workers reduced emissions by 12%. And the great miracle of that statistic is that the shale revolution in America happened during those years.
Shale oil, right?
Yes,
Shale. S-H-A-L-E, you mean?
That's correct.
Not S-H-E-L-L,
we
right.
were drilling like crazy.
Now, some people have a problem with shale. Do they think it's going to hurt the Earth's foundation or something? Some people don't like shale oil. I think I read that. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, we hear a lot of environmentalist conspiracy theories. I'm not sure what happened when Pompeii went off, but I'm pretty sure that our oil and gas jobs are going to be blamed for them.
Of course.
But, last year, all of my pants shrunk at the same time, and I'm quite certain it was climate change that caused it.
A lot of people are going to shrink if they don't get enough food to eat.
You know, a lot of these environmentalists, they are fed a bunch of talking points. That's all they know to argue. You know, I had an
A
interesting
lot of them are basically lobbyists also. They get paid to do those jobs.
You're right, including groups like the Environmental Defense Fund. Last year in Baltimore at the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, I had a very interesting discussion with an attorney from the Environmental Defense Fund. We were talking about pore space law and talking about carbon capture and storage. And I asked him afterwards, I said, you know, whose carbon are we pumping into the ground? And he said, I don't get what you're saying. I said, well,
Dr. Strand just mentioned that on a show with him.
We're talking about carbon capture, and we're talking about pore space law. We're talking about liability and who it's transferred to after about a 10-year period. You know, and we were talking about China's carbon emissions because this
The
environmental
highest in the world.
over twice the annual carbon emissions of the United States.
And what did they say? I'm building a coal plant every week. So is India, which is 45% of the world. There are over 3 billion people if you add the two of those continents together. You add Africa in there, and that's another billion. But the biggest emissions, China will sell us cobalt that they've got these little black kids with no mask on, getting toxic cobalt out of mines in the ground, right? We talk about fossil fuels out of the ground. Where do rare earth minerals come from? The lithium, right? Eric, they come from mines. Is mines considered the ground? What is it considered a mine? I don't know.
Well, it takes 200 tons to get enough of the rare earth to make one battery.
One battery.
One.
And
For-
that's the
for a car.
lithium, the graphite, the cobalt.
For a car. 200 tons.
And they use slave labor
A lot
over
of it,
in
yeah.
China. And these little boys, I saw a little boy, blew all over him in Africa at the mine, digging with his hand, and dirty all over from blue.
Oh, yeah.
And that's toxic, I think.
Yes,
I think
it
I
is.
read
Oh, absolutely.
cobalt was toxic.
Yes, it is.
We don't really care. We put on this facade that we care about people and, you know, we this, that, and the other, but then we let China take over this country, and that's not a problem from Biden only, it wasn't from Trump, and only Obama. It's been going on for too long, for 50 years, that we let them take over. I remember when I had something made in America on my back. Now everything is made in China. But I tell you, I just created a doggy pillow, I'll have to show it to you, and it is made, not made in China, it's on my card. It took me 4.5 years, it's patent pending right now. And they're from Pakistan, and I helped a flooded community over there. I get a few made here. And I refused China. I would have never made that pill if it had to be in China. I could have got it. I went to Mexico, I didn't go, but I talked to people, Honduras, I tried all over the world. And then I found a Pakistani agent, and I got it made in Pakistan. But China, number one, the quality's not there. Remember when we had such great things? Anybody got anything on right now made in America? Anybody here?
Yeah, I think mine is. I have a tailor that makes mine here.
Oh, okay. That's why it's made in America. But I bet the fabric come from America. I doubt it these days. Eric, what do you think the future? Oh, did you read the story on Secretary of Energy Granholm?
Yes.
What happened to her?
No,
it's so funny.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that the one where
She was driving cross country.
That's
Her
right,
guy was
that's right.
driving.
I did hear about
driving
that.
her cross country, and they were running out of charge, and they couldn't find a charging station. Right, it's the third, from what I read, charging stations in the country versus gas stations, 46,000, 152,000, and so she sent her lead man or woman, I don't know which one, to go and get. I think it was a guy, to get a parking spot at the next charging station. He blocked the spot. A woman came up with her husband and her baby that needed to get on down the road. They called the police because they wouldn't move. I understand it happened to the president of Ford too, not the same thing, but he was having a problem traveling around the country, finding charging stations. If you want, I have no problem with EVs, but let's integrate it into a sensible system. All the rare earth minerals, like we get oil from us in Saudi Arabia, all the rare earth minerals, China has 90% of the magnets in the world and 80% of the rare earth minerals is what I'm reading. Is that right, Eric?
Yes, but they have discovered several things in Nevada. They discovered a huge lithium underneath a lake.
Oh, really?
And
so it's in the ground, like fossil fuels?
Yeah, it's actually it's underneath the lake. And so we do have access to them. That's not the issue. Is there
But will he let us drill it?
Well, is there a place for electric vehicles? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are they going to be the only thing in town? No.
You don't think the 50% that he's
I
demanding
cannot
will
see
happen?
that. Right now, I think I've sold 6 electric vehicles this year. Mm-hmm. Now I sell 400 cars to 500 cars a month. I've sold 6 this year.
Right. It's about that 6%.
We can't get any in. I've gotten in 2 Cadillac Lyrics. I've gotten in 2 Chevrolets. I've gotten in no Buicks. I got 1 Hummer just came in.
Oh, yeah, they make the Hummer now, and it's
The
electric.
Hummer, it's electric
It's
EV.
only electric, isn't it?
So is there a place? Yes, we have more coming. And, they're very nice. But, like the hurricane that just hit Florida, several electric cars caught on fire because you can't mix salt water with an EV car.
And if it gets too hot or too cold, isn't the charge take 2 times longer?
Well, the charging, they're doing a lot to help that with the charging stations you can buy. You can get the very quick charging stations that are expensive. But you can also now, and this started in California, where when you go to a station, you give them your battery, you take a fully charged battery and you take off. So you swap.
Those batteries are pretty heavy, aren't they?
But the lithium ones are a lot easier
okay.
today. And so, that is one option, is where they fully charge the batteries there and you just rent your batteries.
Well, they're having blackouts. The electric
Yeah.
grid is in such bad shape in California.
Right. No, well, I don't see how they do this without going to some type of nuclear power plants.
Right.
I don't see them.
And that's what they're doing in Europe. We won't use nuclear power. I don't know why.
Oh, China does nuclear power.
Right,
A lot of
everybody
people
has.
do.
You have to have an integrated energy system. There's nothing wrong with windmills. There's nothing wrong with
Right.
solar. There's nothing wrong with EVs. But we do not get rid, and we can't. When I turn that light on right now, if I go turn the lights off on my cameraman and turn them back on, what am I using? Electricity and coal, correct?
Well, and natural gas.
And natural gas.
is powering most of the plants. And that's where the lady who was head of Exxon came to speak at my Rotary Club about 3 years ago. And so, the Q&A came, and so they asked her, said, well, are you nervous about all these electric cars? And she said, why would I be? She said, where do you think you get electricity?
That's right. So we've got to fix our grid. And I'm going to tell you, most people don't know. And I didn't know until I was doing shows, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't think you'd turn the lights on and just figure, oh, they come on.
No,
Where does it come from? It's
Most of the
magic.
plants are natural gas plants that, we have some coal, but mostly natural gas now.
Well, they
And-
close the coal down, right?
Right. And so the natural gas plants, there's got to be a way to make electricity it has to use some type of fossil fuel product.
Mm-hmm. We can't live without. They're not telling people that.
Exxon people, they're not worried about electric cars because it's going to probably make demand for their fossil fuels greater
Right.
demand.
Right.
In order to get, the footprint for EV being carbon neutral doesn't work. It is no way that it is more fuel efficient for the world to make an EV car than it is a ICE car, which is internal combustion engine. At least not right now. Mm-hmm. So do I see there's a place for EV? Absolutely. We're gearing up for it. GM made each of us spend $250,000 at each dealership to get charging stations.
Yeah.
And all the stuff we had to buy forklifts to move cars around because a dead electric car, you can't move it, so you have to take a forklift to move it around. So we had to buy all these things for GM to be compliant.
Wow. Or you couldn't sell their gas car.
That's right.
Wow. The push is, so I just talked to a friend of mine in Seattle that bought a Tesla. And he told me they gave him like 20% off the car. They paid for the charging station in his house. And, you know, get whatever you need installed, something you needed to get installed for the car. It was amazing. They basically gave him the car so they can say they're selling these cars.
And guess where Tesla got the money from?
The
federal
government, because
government.
Elon Musk is
The
big
federal
with the federal
government
government.
is the only reason why Tesla lost money every year except the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. Because the government is subsidizing them so heavily.
Right.
A lot of people don't know this either. Tesla is the worst car per 100 problems in the world.
Really? I didn't know that.
In
What
the
what
world.
happens with it?
They have the most problems of any car.
And they have a
They are at the
electric
bottom of
battery.
the list of J.D. Powers, and J.D. Powers tried to get Tesla's information, and Tesla wouldn't give it to them. So they got it another way and found out that they had the worst problems per 100 cars of any car in the world. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the quality is not there, but the quality I'm seeing now in the next generation cars with lithium and things is getting much better.
Now that's a lithium ion battery, is
Lithium-
that
well,
correct?
Actually, they use aluminum.
Oh, okay.
Aluminum is they figured a way. GM it's called an Ultium battery.
So GM came up with this
GM
idea,
came
not
up with
China.
the Ultium. That's right. GM came up with the Ultium battery, and with the using aluminum along with
Which is lighter.
the cobalt and things like that, it's created a much better battery, much longer lasting,
Easier to charge.
easier to charge. I will tell you, I had these bad boy buggies for hunting. I like to hunt, and these were the old type batteries that, you know, charge up and you got to add water to them and all those kind of things. Well, finally, after 3 or 4 years, they're pretty much useless. Mm-hmm. And my electric cart company found a lithium pack to replace the old system with, and put it in my electric carts, and now I have brand new carts again. I mean, the power's much better, the charge lasts longer, so they are making a lot of improvements in the EVs, and there is a place for them. I'm not
Yeah.
saying they won't happen.
Right.
There is a place for them, but it's going to be a lot less than they're predicting.
Right, and I hope it should be. You read about Patera, right? I think that's the name of the bus company that we gave $3 billion to make make buses with EVs. We gave them $3 billion. I have to repeat that number. About 2 years ago. It's really strange that Secretary Granholm sold her stock right before they did bankruptcy, the first of the year, and she made $1.6 million. We did the same thing with Solantra under Obama, which is the solar company. We gave them $1 billion. They were bankrupt. This is our money. This is taxpayer money we giving away. Ain't no president giving away their own. And they were bankrupt in the next year. And little mistake here, but everybody had stock in it they sold right before the companies went out of business. It's been a pleasure having you all on. Dianne Andrews in Black and White.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
Me too.
I
You're
really
welcome.
enjoyed it.
Me too.